The discussion involving Bill Maher and Stephen A. Smith isn't so much a clash of adversaries as it is a harsh, candid self-assessment from two dedicated Democrats convinced their party has profoundly gone astray, clearing a direct route for Donald Trump's apparently inexorable comeback. A mutual exasperation electrifies the air, though their individual anxieties differ, exposing the profound ideological and pragmatic rift currently splintering the American left. Stephen A. Smith, consistently the realist, concentrates on strategy and public image, highlighting the stunning contradiction that even after 2 impeachments and 34 felony convictions, Trump is viewed by a massive contingent of Americans as more conventional than today's Democratic leadership. Smith notes the media's hysteria, seeing their alarm and shouts of, "There he is at it again." But he instantly reframes that dread as one of Trump's assets, stressing that, "at it again," just signifies Trump is fulfilling the precise pledges he made to his supporters during the campaign. He honored his commitment, entering the presidency and signing executive actions in his first week, fully aware they could be litigated, which let him declare, "I honored my commitment." Trump grasped the objective, as Smith frames it, concentrating tirelessly on the vital concerns that genuinely rob working Americans of sleep: the financial climate, the escalating border situation, and homeland security. Bill Maher, conversely, concedes this tactical savvy, acknowledging the spike in backing for Trump, especially from unforeseen population segments, is remarkable, particularly considering the constant, hostile assaults he has endured from progressive media organizations intent on interring his political life beneath heaps of indignation and controversy. Maher and Smith both concur that the Democrats effectively conceded this win by fixating on ideological purity and identity-based politics while disregarding crucial economic survival matters. Smith fervently denounces the party for seeming as though topics relevant to a fraction of 1% of the people, such as those related to the transgender populace, held more precedence than the viability and security of the working household. He questions which commitments the Democrats truly honored that connected with the electorate, grieving that regular Americans, the very foundation of the Democratic coalition, now feel deserted, ignored, and without political representation, observing their officials pursue social media validation rather than addressing issues like skyrocketing inflation, employment instability, and surging crime infiltrating previously secure communities. The conversation then intensifies regarding the dual shortcomings of public perception and high-level appointments, domains where Stephen A. Smith assigns the Democrats full blame. Smith articulates his deep dissatisfaction with the party's move to protect Kamala Harris from primary contests, refusing her the essential forum to validate her policies, her charisma, or her resilience with the electorate. They merely awarded her the position, trusting that existing recognition would foster excitement. But the outcome was a massive disappointment of hopes, presenting the citizenry with a remote personality who operated largely in the shadows for 4 years. Quiet on pivotal topics, then abruptly thrust forward and anticipated to rally immediate backing. Electors observed Harris and perceived a politician practicing her script. But they observed Trump and perceived an individual speaking viscerally, someone genuine. And that distinction, genuineness versus artificiality, completely altered the dynamic, in Smith's view. Additionally, the immigration topic exposes what Smith labels as the Democrats' situational ethical indignation and double standards. He points out to Maher and the viewers that Barack Obama, ostensibly the party's cherished figurehead, actually removed a greater number of immigrants than Trump. Still, when Trump upholds immigration statutes, it is labeled as brutality, whereas when Democrats execute the very same measures, it is discreetly presented as mere governance. Stephen A. Smith's most severe criticism targets the Biden administration's management of the border, where a day one executive action effectively unsecured the boundary, permitting millions of unlawful entries and resulting in foreseeable mayhem, bolstering black markets, narcotic distribution, and human smuggling that now afflict U.S. urban centers, an entirely preventable national security catastrophe. Trump's method, however divisive, at minimum recognizes the situation, while Biden's permissiveness manufactured a profound emergency. Bill Maher, while agreeing on the strategic errors, directs his fury at a more fundamental danger: proclaiming his anger at the Democrats for squandering the election, thus leaving his two primary concerns, democracy and the climate, with no advocates in the Capitol. Maher feels utterly exposed, asserting Trump represents a singular threat, referencing the president's friction with the media and lawsuits against press organizations. Yet, the unspoken rebuttal to Maher's hopelessness is that he fails to see the enduring robustness of America's original governmental design. Stephen A. Smith and others contend that the infrastructure was intentionally engineered to stop any single faction or person from amassing total control, implying that democracy is not the delicate entity Maher imagines. But Maher's apprehension is logical. He witnesses a party so fixated on claiming the moral high ground that it forgoes practical influence, rendering the very topics he holds dear defenseless. The ultimate, contentious insight from this sharp dialogue between Stephen A. Smith and Bill Maher is that the Democrats have fallen prey to their own inconsistencies, fostering a sense that their moral indignation is overwhelmingly partisan and opportunistic. They favored posturing over integrity, presentation over practicality, and in doing so, they not only pushed away the working-class electorate they professed to serve but also handed Donald Trump a compelling narrative of defiant genuineness, rendering him both their greatest political affliction and the direct result of their own massive strategic errors. Both men, lifelong Democrats, are left with an unmistakable feeling of political betrayal, observing their party's dramatic failure to meet expectations. Rewrite of the second section of provided text. The political repercussions, as understood by both Bill Maher and Stephen A. Smith, reach well past a simple election loss. They signify a profound existential breakdown for the Democratic Party, which, in their estimation, has completely lost sight of the populace it purports to defend. Smith restates his central judgment. Trump grasped the objective, as Democrats got lost in academic terminology or symbolic gestures of righteousness. Trump focused intently on the urgent problems that truly afflicted Americans: living expenses, border volatility, and the basic issue of homeland security. Maher, who has spent decades as a vocal detractor of Republican duplicity, now finds himself in the awkward situation of blasting his own faction for the colossal letdown they produced. The most damaging toxic tendency, the one Stephen A. Smith repeatedly returns to, is the party's compulsive dedication to platforms that connect with a very small, loud fringe, creating the clear impression that these specialized concerns supersede the welfare of the American working family. Stephen A. Smith states it plainly: the Democratic Party appeared to act as though concerns affecting under 1% of the populace, like specific topics in the transgender community, held greater importance than tackling rampant inflation, addressing employment instability, or alleviating the widespread national anxiety. This apparent disparity wasn't merely a political gaffe, it constituted a betrayal. Everyday citizens, who previously were the core of the Democratic constituency, looked to the Capitol and found they had no political advocate. Their officials seemed more intent on gaining Twitter praise and placating every noisy segment of the extreme left than on fixing the concrete difficulties they encountered. Smith contends that while he might not endorse all of Trump's language, he perceives a man who speaks instinctively, contrasting dramatically with rivals who sound as if they are simply reciting prepared remarks or serving as PR agents. Smith posits that Trump, despite the relentless attacks by progressive media organizations determined to end his political life, is succeeding specifically due to this defiance. The harder they attempted to ruin him, the more resilient he grew. Individuals who formerly detested him are reconsidering, attracted by his complete rejection of Washington's established conventions. The media's fixation on defeating him, as Smith suggests to Maher, might have achieved the precise opposite outcome, inadvertently transforming Trump into the very icon of defiance that innumerable people now support. This communication breakdown is deeply connected to the breakdown in policy, especially at the border, an area where Stephen A. Smith's analysis is bitingly sharp and complex. Smith references the tenure of President Barack Obama, noting that Obama was labeled the deportee-in-chief by Republicans exactly because, per data acknowledged even by Democrats, he expelled more immigrants than Trump did. This fact, frequently ignored, underscores what Smith and others view as the Democrats' deep-seated situational moral indignation. Why? Smith asks Maher. Is it regarded as governance when Obama implements it covertly, but decried as inhumanity when Trump applies the identical laws? The disparity, Smith determines, is entirely about appearances and posturing rather than ethics. Trump, as sources suggest, makes no excuses for applying the law, which, paradoxically, renders his method feel more forthright to a portion of the public weary of sanitized political rhetoric. Stephen A. Smith underscores the ridiculousness of the prevailing political climate. Watching the broadcast networks discuss Trump, becoming hysterical and declaring, "There he is at it again." But Smith clarifies this expression for Maher, asserting that, "There he is at it again" signifies he's fulfilling what he said he would do. Trump honored his commitment, entering the presidency and signing executive actions in his first week, declaring, "You all challenge it." He understood the executive actions could be overturned by the judiciary. But by moving forward, he could accurately state, "I honored my commitment." Conversely, Smith presses, "What commitments did you honor, from the Democrats?" He asks Maher what single pledge connected with the electorate, making citizens feel that there is no one remaining to advocate for them. The Democratic approach, as Smith sees it, appears centered on being passive, holding off until Trump moves on matters like birthright citizenship before abruptly feigning interest in these matters, topics they were decidedly not discussing throughout the campaign. Absolutely not. The Biden administration, however, elevated this policy muddled to a completely different plane. Based on the criticisms analyzed by Smith and Maher, Smith carefully details the timeline of the failure. President Biden assumes the presidency and on his first day signs an executive action that unsecures the border. This move prompted an influx of over 12 million immigrants entering the country unlawfully. Smith insists that this was not merely an issue of immigration procedures, it constituted a national security failure that was preventable. The ensuing disorder was entirely foreseeable. These individuals, often arriving without sufficient screening or supervision, helped bolster black markets, illicit drug trafficking, human smuggling, and other illegal enterprises that now distress American urban centers. Communities once deemed secure are now confronting escalating crime statistics and overburdened public resources. Stephen A. Smith highlights the harsh contradiction. Biden's permissiveness failed to yield compassion, it yielded a disaster. And currently, it falls to Trump to try and manage the fallout. Trump's strategy, while perhaps divisive or strict, at minimum recognizes the situation. Boundaries are important and statutes are in place for a purpose. The typical American citizen is left bearing the burden of that political miscalculation. Bill Maher, though maybe less fixated on the deportation data than Smith, concurs that the Democrats' strategic errors are inexcusable, particularly their colossal misstep regarding the vice presidential candidate's choice and advancement. Maher is left feeling completely defenseless because his faction lost the election. The crucial error, as both he and Smith see it, involved insulating Kamala Harris from the primary contests. The Democratic leadership, in a remarkable political misjudgment, denied her the opportunity to validate her platform, her resilience, or her resonance with the public. They simply awarded her the position, clinging to the simplistic belief that name recognition would spontaneously generate excitement. Smith underscores the pragmatic truth: politics isn't governed by such rules. For 4 entire years, Harris was viewed primarily as a peripheral player, missing from the main stage, and quiet on pivotal topics, neglecting to project the authoritative leadership aura that the populace anticipates. Then, abruptly, she was featured on all campaign materials, anticipated to incite immediate, passionate backing. The approach was flawed from its inception. The public perceived a remote personality who seemed to be practicing her script, resulting in what Smith correctly identifies as a colossal letdown of hopes. This is a complete departure from Trump, who, acknowledging his imperfections, is regarded as the most genuine article, someone who spoke instinctively. Smith contends that when the electorate assessed the heavily criticized, impeached, and convicted Trump, they nonetheless determined, he is more conventional than what we had. Separate from the policy and staffing shortcomings, Stephen A. Smith voices individual frustration with the approach of incessantly vilifying Trump. Smith concedes that he is acquainted with Trump personally from social and athletic functions. Remembering phone calls and encounters at basketball matches or boxing rings, he states that while he may object to Trump's behavior, he declined to join in labeling him a racist or a Nazi. Smith perceived that certain allegations made against Trump were demonstrably false, compelling him to tell the accusers, "Look, you all must improve your argument." Smith's exasperation was amplified by the Democrats' own conduct, such as their attempt to sway the election and the balloting, and the tactic of essentially trying to emotionally blackmail me into voting for you. This fear-based tactic was effective only one time. By 2023, the relentless alarmist narrative had worn out centrist liberals. These citizens, contending with high prices, more crime, and ceaseless societal conflicts, started to question if the genuine danger was Trump or the establishment continually sounding the alarm about him. The media's constant caricature no longer matched the circumstances people witnessed directly. Trump's flaws have, in a way, become his greatest strength, casting him as more authentic, more human, and indeed, more accessible than his aloof, refined rivals. As Smith encapsulates, the public views Trump as the most genuine article. They might not approve of all his statements, but they believe he is sincere. Bill Maher's distinct anger arises from the subsequent power void. He is irate with the Democrats because they took a chance and failed, abandoning his two primary concerns, democracy and the climate, without any advocate in the Capitol. He feels defenseless because the opposition now commands the judiciary, the House, and the Senate. However, Smith disputes the severity of this fundamental dread, refusing to accept the premise that the GOP intends to undermine democracy. Smith contends that while Maher's exasperation is logical, especially regarding Trump initiating lawsuits against media entities he considers untruthful, such moves are merely an individual leveraging the system's inherent checks. Smith reminds Maher that the American infrastructure was intentionally engineered to stop any single faction or person from amassing total control. With authority divided among Congress, the Senate, the judiciary, and the executive, the notion of an autocracy forming suddenly is nearly unimaginable. The original design, Smith maintains, remains remarkably strong. Maher's perspective, Smith implies, seems to miss this core strength, likely fueled by his intense worry about being left politically impotent. Complaining sadly, "I have no advocate in Washington. You left me completely defenseless." Ultimately, the dialogue serves as a potent critique from two vantage points inside the Democratic Party: Maher, the philosophical liberal, fearful of losing core principles, and Stephen A. Smith, the direct political analyst, incensed by the party's tactical self-destruction. Smith perceives a party that was overly preoccupied with its internal conflicts and symbolic gestures to fulfill tangible commitments that would connect with the public. Trump, conversely, keeps succeeding exactly because his style, unrefined, uncensored, and genuinely himself, strikes a public oversaturated with polished platitudes as remarkably normal. The Democrats' inconsistencies, spanning from their garbled platform to their massive failure to advocate for regular people, are not merely haunting them, they are actively driving the electorate toward the very opponent the party has invested years attempting to vanquish. Both Maher and Smith concur that unless the Democrats directly address these disparities, cease elevating privileged anxieties above survival issues, and discover a genuine voice that actually wages the campaigns the working-class public once waged, they will persist in forfeiting the credibility, the ballots, and the political influence they desperately seek. The query for both Bill Maher and Stephen A. Smith lingers. How does a party bounce back when its own conduct makes its chief rival appear to be the more genuine choice? The prevailing sentiment from both men is that the Democratic Party is still in a state of denial, tragically repeating the very errors that led to their current political predicament. The rift that Bill Maher and Stephen A. Smith observe between the Democratic Party leadership and the average American citizen isn't just strategic, it's fundamental. Stemming from what Smith portrays as the party's deep-seated desertion of the causes that genuinely impact the working class. Smith consistently questions the idea that the Democrats effectively served their constituency, asking sharply, what commitments did they honor that truly connected with the electorate? He asserts that no citizen today can observe the Democratic Party and declare with certainty, "There's an advocate for us. Someone who ascends to Capitol Hill and wages the campaigns that we need them waging for us." The harsh truth, as Smith articulates it, is that they failed to do so, and that is the reason their behinds are at home and that man is back in the White House. This inability to produce results is worsened by the party's passive reactions. Trump, by comparison, grasped the objective perfectly. He focused intently on the urgent problems that truly robbed Americans of sleep: the financial climate, the border, and homeland security, while the Democrats were preoccupied with contorting themselves to placate every noisy segment of the extreme left. Smith notes that when Trump brings up divisive topics, like those related to birthright citizenship, the Democrats abruptly express interest in them. He presses to know where this interest was throughout the campaign. Absolutely not. Trump, fully aware an executive action on such topics might be overturned by the judiciary, nonetheless signs it in his first week and proclaims, "I honored my commitment." This straightforward, uncensored method is exactly what makes him, to millions, more conventional than what we had. Stephen A. Smith's exasperation mounts when addressing the party's tactic of relentless vilification. Smith concedes that he is upset about the result, but not purely because Trump prevailed. His fury originates from the measures taken by the Democratic Party following the election, especially in an attempt to sway the election and the balloting, and the tactic of essentially trying to emotionally blackmail me into voting for you. Smith, who was acquainted with Trump personally, communicating with him via telephone and encountering him at basketball matches or boxing rings prior to his political ascent, found the ceaseless stream of accusations unacceptable. He declined to join in labeling Trump a racist or a Nazi, acknowledging that certain allegations being made about him I knew were false. Smith implored those on the left to improve their argument. That tactic of intimidation and vilification, which successfully painted Trump as a national threat one time, had entirely lost its power by 2023. Bill Maher, depleted by the political ramifications, finds himself trapped in a disabling apprehension. He is irate with the Democrats because my topics, particularly democracy and the climate, currently lack any defenders in Washington since the Democrats squandered the election. Maher feels completely defenseless, particularly noting that the opposition now commands the judiciary, the House and the Senate. He is concerned about Trump's conduct, such as initiating legal challenges against specific news entities and media companies he considers untruthful. Nonetheless, Stephen A. Smith provides a crucial counterbalance to Maher's fundamental panic. Smith declares unequivocally, "I don't accept the premise that the GOP intends to undermine democracy either." He reminds Maher that the move of suing press organizations, while aggravating to those on the left, is merely an individual leveraging the system's inherent checks. Smith asserts that America was intentionally engineered to prevent any one party or individual from amassing total control. Given the authorities distributed among Congress, the Senate, the judiciary, and the executive, converting the country into a dictatorship suddenly is nearly impossible. The nation's original structure, Smith maintains, stays robust. It is not a delicate democracy. It's a remarkably strong one, a fact which Maher, in his apprehension, appears to miss. The Democratic Party's strategic errors, as highlighted by Smith, were devastating, especially the move to insulate Kamala Harris from the political proving grounds. Rather than allowing her to validate herself, the Democrats denied her the opportunity to test her platform, her resilience or her resonance with voters. They merely awarded her the nomination, trusting that name recognition would spontaneously generate enthusiasm. It failed. Smith maintains that politics isn't governed by such rules. For 4 years, Harris was viewed as a peripheral player, frequently missing from the main stage and quiet on pivotal topics, seldom showing the authoritative leadership aura required. When she was abruptly featured on all campaign materials, the public was left with the image of a politician practicing her script, culminating in a colossal letdown of hopes. When the public looked at Trump, they perceived someone who spoke instinctively, affirming that the distinction, genuineness versus artificiality, was sufficient to reverse the entire contest. This culture of posturing over integrity extends cruelly to the immigration debate. Smith references the historical data. Observing that Barack Obama, the party's cherished figurehead, was labeled the deportee-in-chief by Republicans because, per data acknowledged by Democrats themselves, he expelled more immigrants than Trump did. Smith presses Maher to justify the abrupt, fierce anger. Why are Democrats so irate at Trump for expelling illegal immigrants when they passively tolerated the identical policies under Obama? Smith determines that the anger feels partisan and the reason is less about ethics and more about appearances. When Trump applies immigration statutes, it is instantly decried as inhumanity. But when Democrats undertake the identical measures, it is presented as simple governance. This glaring double standard reveals how much of contemporary anger is posturing over integrity. Furthermore, the Biden administration's conduct created a self-inflicted injury. President Biden assumes the presidency and on his first day signs an executive action that unsecures the border and permits over 12 million immigrants to enter the country unlawfully. Smith characterizes this as a national security failure that was preventable. The ensuing disorder was entirely foreseeable, with these millions of individuals arriving without sufficient screening or supervision and consequently bolstering black markets. Illicit drug trafficking, human smuggling and other illegal enterprises that now distress American urban centers. Smith highlights the harsh contradiction. Biden's permissiveness failed to yield compassion. It yielded a disaster. And currently, it falls to Trump to try and manage the fallout. Trump's strict method, even if divisive, at least recognizes the situation. Boundaries are important and statutes are in place for a purpose. The ultimate, shared verdict from both dedicated Democrats is that the party's own disparities are finally confronting them, costing them the citizens they profess to comprehend by prioritizing privileged anxieties and symbolic anger over the essential security, stability, and genuineness desired by the typical American.